I work in data science, so I'm surrounded by facts and figures, and a big part of my job is trying to make sense of the world through numbers. I built teams to look at what makes a lead turn into a sale, or how best to route a vehicle through traffic, or how information spreads across a network. Ultimately, every data science project is about understanding something new, trying to uncover that which was previously hidden. And that's the joy of it for most of us who work in the field. We enjoy solving puzzles. 3 years ago, my wife, Helen, was diagnosed with terminal cancer. After the shock and the anger, I did what I normally do. I tried to look at things objectively, factually. Could I make sense of my life with data the way I do in my job? Whenever my wife corrected one of the many errors I'd make throughout the day, I'd often remark, "My mistake," to which she would automatically reply, in the deepest voice she could muster, "Your mistake indeed." This little piece of theatre, repeated dozens, if not hundreds of times by us over the last 15 years, was stolen from the 2001 comedy Zoolander, where the villain Mugatu spits it out at his poor minion. Why did we adopt this particular vignette? Why not? Couples do stupid, funny things. We had, as you probably do, dozens of little quirks known only to us. Meaningless, but ours, part of being human. On reflection, this is the fifth thing I'll miss most about Helen. Not the big romantic gestures, just the moments of small intimacies. A hand on the knee while driving, a song lyric hummed at dinner, or the micro-performance of an old comedy played out every time I mixed up the tea or forgot to put the washing on. Yes, the fifth thing. I have made a list of grief. Coping mechanisms are important. We make lists to organise unclear thoughts, to make the ephemeral physical. We make lists to avoid dealing with the consequences of still being here. I have lists, tables and schedules aplenty. There are parallels here with the workplace. How many times does a well-formed plan help to manage the internal anxiety of the number of things we need to do? Entire industries have been set up to help us manage our time. Getting things done is a technique that has served millions. I've used it myself in the past, and it's based on keeping lists. I'm also a big advocate of Agile, and I encourage it particularly for data science projects. Agile is flexible and adaptable, which for data science, an inherently unpredictable endeavour, is fundamental, but it also has structure and form, lists of user stories and tasks, sprint dates, graphs, charts, metrics to follow. Atul Gawande's book, The Checklist Manifesto, shows just how important lists can be. From medicine to aviation, instilling order in the world keeps us safe and sane. Lists help in work, perhaps they help in life too. For instance, since Helen's death, I've compiled an informal list of the things that unreasonably annoy me. The phrase, "How are you?" especially when accompanied by a sympathetic head tilt. What am I supposed to say? The guilt attached to going out with friends. The rest of the world going about their business as if nothing has happened. The loneliness and self-pity attached to not going out with friends. Any and all dealings with bureaucracy, including, but not limited to, banks, utilities, insurance companies, funeral directors, and the fucking DWP. My 3 children constantly, and then myself again for getting annoyed at them. This focus on lists has made me think more than once about the facts and figures associated with dying and with grief. We're bombarded with numbers and risks. Everything causes cancer. Some of the same things also cure cancer. We have average life expectancies and insurance premiums to match. The stock market and our wealth move up and down. House prices are still the topic du jour at middle-class dinner parties. And elections and referendums, of which we have all surely had enough, are a feast of statistics. Can we make sense of the business of living and dying through numbers? This is my attempt to do so, to solve the puzzle. It started 2 years ago. A glioblastoma, as I now know, is the most common brain cancer in adults, but still luckily not that common. About 3 in 100,000 will be diagnosed a year, and of those, there's a 2-year survival rate of about 5%. That means that in Cardiff, where I live, each year about 10 people will be diagnosed, and at least 9 of them will be dead within 2 years. This is incredibly bleak, but on hearing this news, my first instinct was to try to understand why do the 5% sometimes live for longer. Our oncologist, on discovering that both Helen and I had STEM backgrounds, described the probability curve associated with survival. It was heavily right-skewed, that is to say, most of the mortality happened pretty soon, but there was also a long tail. We see these sorts of distributions all over the place. Salaries tend to have long tails, most people in an organisation earning around the same, and then a few people earning magnitudes more. House prices too tend towards a long tail distribution. Most houses in the UK sell for between £100,000 to £500,000, with a few selling for millions, and fewer still for tens of millions. In our case, looking at the tail told us that although most people do, not everybody with this disease dies quickly, and some don't die at all. Why not? There's a useful area of statistics called conditional probability. It can seem counterintuitive sometimes, as with the famous example of Monty Hall and his game show. In essence, the host of the game show, Monty Hall, allows you to pick from one of 3 doors. Behind one of the doors is a sports car, and behind the other 2 are goats. After you make a pick, Monty removes one of the other 2 doors and allows you to change your pick. Should you do it? The answer is always yes, because Monty has some extra information that you don't. He knows what's behind all 3 doors and will only ever remove a door with a goat behind it. The probability changes from 1/3 to 1/2. Before you choose a door, the probability for each door is 1/3. After you choose, the new information means the probability gets updated to 1/2. Similarly, with things like disease or risk, we can use conditional probabilities to help improve our accuracy. As we've seen with coronavirus, if mortality rate for a particular disease is, say, 1%, then is that 1% for everybody, regardless of age, health, symptoms, etc.? Probably not, right? If you're older or are already ill or had a difficult surgery, then you're more likely to get a worse prognosis. We were somewhat cheered that Helen was in great health, under 40, had a perfect surgery and was starting chemo and radiotherapy bang on schedule. Surely all this meant that we'd be at the far end of the distribution, the 5%, the tail of the graph that stretches out to 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. The statistics didn't stop there. Early on, we also had the option for Helen to enter a medical trial. The expected outcome was another 2 to 3 months of life. The side effects were potential loss of vision. Quite the decision to make. In data science, instead of a trial, we use something called an A/B test to figure out if, say, changing a button on a website leads to a greater number of clicks, or altering the script of a contact center agent leads to a better experience for a customer. The trick is to change one thing for a period of time and run some of your customers through the new process while keeping most customers going through the old way, and then measuring the effect. This is easy to do digitally when concerned with sales or click rates, but much harder to do when dealing with people's lives. Medical trials are fascinating and by necessity have to be planned much more meticulously than an A/B test. They're often double-blind and use control groups. This means that on a trial, some of the participants of that trial won't actually be given the drug or treatment that is hoped would lead to an intervention. Instead, they'll often be given a fake called a placebo. The placebo recipients are chosen randomly and are known as the control group. The double-blind part of the study means that neither the participants nor the people running the experiment know who is in the control group and who is receiving the actual treatment. This seemingly over-the-top procedure is a result of hundreds of years of post-Enlightenment thinking and scientific method. It's been found that when people know they're receiving a treatment, they often report better symptoms, regardless of the efficacy of the treatment. A sugar pill can make you feel better if you think it will make you feel better. And interestingly, a sugar pill presented via an injection or in an official-looking packet will often improve things more than a sugar pill from an unmarked bottle. Homeopathy, acupuncture, energy bracelets, these are all extravagant forms of sugar pill. They contain no active ingredients. However, the ceremony, the belief, the expectation that something may make you feel better has power. Again, as data scientists, we sometimes see the equivalent of sugar pills for data. Poorly constructed A/B tests, multiple variables change so it's difficult to understand which led to an impact, poor sampling, inadequate or underpowered testing, and yet decisions will often be made on the back of these trials if they align with organisational direction. Medicine hasn't managed yet to eradicate magical thinking. Look at the growth of the anti-vax movement today. So it's not surprising that this is still rife, if less talked about in business. We decided not to go ahead with the trial. We're probably better qualified than most to make a decision based on the numbers, but emotionally, how can we begin to think about trade-offs like your vision versus some extra months of probably poor quality life? Is anybody qualified to think about that? Ultimately, the numbers, the statistics, they affected nothing. Helen was one of the 95% and passed away almost 2 years to the day from the start of her symptoms. She was first ill on our son's birthday in July 2017 and finally died the day before his birthday in July 2019. Of all the days in the year, did it have to be that one? No. Random chance made it so, nothing else. Randomness is a fascinating subject and again an area where my life and work intersect. Lots of data science about trying to eliminate randomness, trying to discern a signal in the noise. Nate Silver has written about this and his 538 website is a great resource. And Nassim Nicholas Taleb takes a different view of the world. The term black swan is now heard often in business. I've written and spoken about this too and tend to come down on Taleb's side of the fence. Randomness is everywhere, in the weather, the stock market, elections. It's impossible to really tell with exact accuracy what the world will look like tomorrow, let alone in a month or a year. And yet, as data scientists, we're often tasked with trying. Department heads want to know whether sales will increase or decrease. HR teams want to know whether attrition is likely to change. Resource managers ask for forecasts on call volumes. Everybody wants to know the future. Again, coronavirus has shown us that sometimes the future is unknowable. What the grieving want to know is how long the grief will last, and will it decrease linearly? Is there a point at which my sadness will cross the x-axis and I'll wake up feeling fine? I hope not. That sounds like forgetting. Or is grief more like a sine wave, a tide ebbing and flowing from day to day? Or is grief more like a random distribution that spikes according to some unknown formula, some days bringing highs or lows punctuated by a mishmash of good, bad, indifferent, and so on? Is grief random noise, or does it alter according to some hidden signal buried deep in the psyche? What effect did this have on me as a data scientist, as a colleague, as a father, as a human? It's difficult to say a year on. I still think of her every day. It's easier now to look at photographs than it was. Yet all my memories of the happy times we had together, our children being born, holidays, dinners with friends, Christmases with families, these are all tainted now with the knowledge of what was to come. Have I become more resilient? Probably. When you tell your children the mother is going to die, talk in front of a crowd no longer holds fear. Do I value people more? After visiting a hospice every day for 3 months, this makes the trip to the office to see colleagues a pleasure, which has meant coronavirus impacted me all the more, having only been back to the office for a few months before lockdown began. Do I value my own life more? Watching as the person you care about most in the world slowly loses their personality makes you value the most important things all the more. After a dark period over Christmas, I've come to understand that the only real currency is our time, and especially our time with others. George Box, a famous statistician, said, "All models are wrong, but some are useful." A usefully wrong model is the Kubler-Ross stages of grief. It suggests that when you grieve, there are 5 different stages that need to be dealt with: denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. There are other similar models that extend and alter, but this is still the best known. And it feels innately correct to me. Personally, in the times I have experienced grief, I've moved through each of the different stages, sometimes moving through them in order, like steps in a project plan, sometimes, lots of the time, circling back to denial until I walk past a shop and see a dress or a bag that Helen would like, and I think about buying it or texting her. The awful enormity of her death hits me again. Move straight to depression, do not pass go. Do I want to reach acceptance? Is it healthy to come to terms with the person I cared most about in the world? The person I've spent the last 20 years with and would hope to spend the next 40 with. The person I can share stupid jokes, my most intimate moments, hopes, dreams, worries, regrets. This person is gone forever. I don't know that I will ever feel ready to accept this. Looking at the numbers, sharing my grief, these are all ways of coping. They're not perfect, but perhaps nothing can be. This focus on numbers is a search for exactness in an inexact world. I will not share the other things I miss about my wife. They were ours, now they're mine. And they're all I have to buffer me against the next wave, the next spike, the next time the slope of my particular graph rises and then leaves me helpless.